Is this your association? You have a crack team that works on perfecting your events and publications year-round, and it pays off. Members praise the quality and value of the content. However, there's no place for members to engage with your association day to day. When they visit your website, it's a ghost town. If that sounds familiar, then this episode's for you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Association Amplified podcast. We help explore solutions to bridge the member value gap, the biggest threat to associations today. Today, our guest is Randell Mauricio, COO of Worker Bee TV, and today we're going to be talking about your website and how associations can extract as much value as possible out of it. Welcome, Randell, to the podcast.
I hope I can deliver that value proposition. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Great to have you back on the podcast. Really enjoyed our last conversation. For everyone that doesn't know, I mean, you've been working in the association space for a long time now. And a big part of that has actually been about the topic that we're going to be going through today is, what is that real true value of the association website? So I'm excited to really dig into it and get our guests real juicy information. I think we'll push some status quo, which is really kind of our job on this podcast. We really believe on how we can be progressive in the association space and how associations and those progressive leaders can really be armed with what they need to think strategically and really meet members and prospective members where they are today.
Typically, I'm on the other side of the camera, but I'm happy to be here nonetheless. Excited.
Well, typically you're behind a desk making this company work, but so yeah, let's dig into it. I mean, the way I like to break this down for folks is, okay, let's stick with what we know as a vessel to kind of get us thinking about what the role of the website is. Because so often when the topic of website, and the viewers right now are probably thinking this, okay, we're talking website. So we're, what's the UX? What's the UI? How do we organize this stuff so people can find what's our navigation? Does it feel modern? And those are all really important. But what we're going to be talking about here is what is the value of it? And there's two sides to that coin, right? We want to focus on it, as we're interested here at Worker Bee TV, is the value to the member. So how in our current day, how can we use the website, which is the main modality in which members are going to be interacting with our organization? How can that be used to deliver value? And then two, any good organization to fulfill its mission needs resources to do that. And of course, we're talking about revenue. So again, in today's digital age, how do you leverage your website for the buyers of today to be able to facilitate the revenue that you need to be able to serve your members and fulfill your mission?
You and I have this conversation a lot. And so let's parcel it out and go in layers. And maybe I'll start big picture and you can guide me and we can get a bit more granular. But from a big picture standpoint, it boils down to what your focus is. And we talk a lot about strategy, but your website is bigger than just what you described it to be. It's bigger than just a splash page. It's bigger than just a gateway. It actually is a place you want your members to go to. So you work backwards from that. What are the motivations of a member? Take it a step beyond that. What are the motivations of a prospective member? So it all boils down to the motivations. And if I'm somebody considering to membership, certainly serve me up content and mechanisms and interact with me using your website, using things that appeal to my motivations. But if I'm a member, we can literally list out all of those motivations. I want to learn. I want to engage. I want to be entertained. I want to be inspired. I want to interact with other peers and like-minded people. I want a mechanism for certification so that I can propel and further my career. All of those things can be listed out. And so from a big picture standpoint, are you using your website to deliver that type of value? Because you already know who your persona is or what the makeup of a member and prospective member is. So are you using your website as a way to deliver that value? Or are you using it as a splash page right now to disseminate content, but also disperse the focus off of your brand. And I think that's a really big opportunity that is often not talked about enough. Yes, we are in our past conversations. I love that we're fully receptive and embrace the fact that we're in a social media era, in a social media age, or whatever you want to call it, right? The YouTube age, the Facebook age. But it doesn't mean that you have to use your website as a stepping stone to Facebook or to YouTube or to wherever your podcast is or to wherever your certification courseware is. It could all be consolidated into your website so that your member looks at you and your organization as a one-stop shop. So there's more to unpack there, but from a big picture, I think that is a golden opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of kicking this off. Obviously, we need to pay close attention to who our members or our prospective members. I like to really actually think about, we get locked into the language of for the member, but in every association is a little bit different. But I actually like to think about this categorically as the industry. We want to honor our members and treat them as individuals, and we're not doing that here. But the reason I pause to talk about this about categorically as industry, because that's a really fast and loose way of talking about the general segment that our association serves. So in this industry that we live in, and the segment of that industry which makes up our members, what is important to them, right? Which is what you were touching on there. We know who our persona is, what those individuals or those companies, what kind of topics and issues are most important to them. And what we'll talk about further here is how do we disseminate, be the provider and disseminate that information so that we are the ones that are going to be facilitating it. And you mentioned content, and we kind of jumped right into that point. For folks that are maybe joining us for the first time, as we spoke there about social media age, it's really the age of information. That is the expectation that I mentioned earlier in where we live, is that information is more accessible than ever before. And frankly, there are just so many organizations out there providing information. So the association really needs to take it upon itself. You're either going to match this environment that you're in and take charge of it, or like it or not, can actually be surpassed as an authority if you're not the one providing that information. So let me break that down a little further. Let's use empathy here. Think about the member. If I'm going to this publication and they're the ones that are actually giving me what I need right now, then what is the role of association, right? There could be the event, there could be some community there, but who's the authority if I'm actually listening over here? So it's a real important piece of the puzzle that if you truly want to impact recruitment, retention, and revenue, you have to be the authority, because that's the piece that is important to your member, is that they're looking for value at the end of the day out of the association. So with that in mind, I'm going to go down a quick rabbit hole. Sure. I want to use something to kind of bring us back to the original topic at hand by using something that all us in the association space are already familiar with. And that is the event, that is the publication, and then that's the adoption of like LMS technology, right? So what is the commonality between all those things? They all are a member benefit, right? They provide value to the member by giving them information, but they're actually all have some sort of revenue model behind them. And that's what I really want us to explore in this conversation for everyone's benefit, is the website is that missing piece that some associations just do really well because they've picked up on that. They've put the right framework around understanding the value of their website. And then when you see associations that are still trying to put the pieces together, they don't have a quite vision of what their website should be, and it ends up being kind of that billboard on the internet.
You really could use it as it's being used right now for many organizations. Let's call that the stat quo. Or you can use it as an engagement hub and really put some purpose to that oomph and added horsepower. To your point, there's a strategic way of looking at it. And I used the word dispersing earlier. And yes, because there are many platforms out there within the domain of social media, content, as we know, is very important. So if the member values line up with podcasts, videos, peer-to-peer access, networking, peer-to-peer exchange, all that, who says that can't live on your website? Because if it's not living on your website, then you're actually fueling your competitors. And your competitors, a lot of people don't recognize this, your competitor very well could be the Facebooks, the YouTubes, the Instagrams, the TikToks of the world. Because guess what? That platform is also focused on engagement. And it's trying to pull eyeballs and attention. We are also in the attention age. So it's trying to manifest that attention onto their platforms, onto their website. So if you don't do it and you're willingly pushing your members off to YouTube to watch your educational video or whatever, you're actually giving YouTube, Google the keys to access your members, your prospective members even, and influence and shape them. Take that a step further. If you're giving the attention and access to their attention to these social media sites or whatever platforms external to your website, you're really not in control. And I think what associations can absolutely take advantage of is the fact that they have a list of people, they have the credibility, and they can exploit that. You can absolutely take advantage of it by focusing on your website. And get this, Marcus, not just using your website as the reason for prospective members to pay attention to you, use it as a reason to also engage members after they become a member. And I think that's an opportunity. So many of association websites are basically a promotion, a billboard, as you mentioned earlier, to become a member. Well, once I become a member, how am I going to use the website afterwards? So if the utility isn't built in and integrated into your website after I become a member, what's going to keep me to stay? If you're willingly pushing me to YouTube, who's to say I'm not going to bump into another association's content that is actually competing in our space? These platforms are engineered and designed to be that one-stop shop. It wasn't too long ago when there were articles about or surveys about millennials and Gen Zers being asked, where do you get your news? What's your news source? Too many people say Facebook. And you don't know if it's authentic or not. But what's interesting there is that they'll go to Facebook to connect with people, like-minded people. They get groups. They can buy things, interact with one another, transact things through Marketplace. And so Facebook has become this ecosystem where they want you to go there so you do not have to leave. If you take that mentality and ideology and apply it to your association, how much better would you be at not only recruiting new members, but keeping them engaged by facilitating the type of things that members want, including peer-to-peer networking, peer-to-peer access. It does not just have to be a billboard to become a member. It could satisfy all the things that a member wants after they register.
No, I love that. There's some really great points there that we should linger on. Going back to speaking about serving your industry, like the segment of the industry, that really resonates with me in terms of what you said about taking the philosophy that we see with these platforms and thinking about, well, actually that in some way is the goal of your website, meaning that the website should be engaging your members and your prospective members. It should be drawing them back, right? Should be treated as a destination. And okay, why make a statement like that? Well, for one, if your industry actually sees you as the authority and they see you as authority because you have so much to offer and it's available online, how does that impact recruitment? Can we take any guesses? Right? Some development happens, within the year, new technology that's disrupting the field. Everyone wants to know what's going on and they're turning to you, right? Or how about what's on the horizon? Let's just pretend the topic is AI because that's what's hot right now, right? What should we be thinking about AI? How do I apply this to my business? Is it really going to save my bottom line? Like, people want to be informed. It's common sense.
And I'm glad that you use the words business. You referred to the business of an association, and that is an absolute truth in my mind. And I just realized now, just listening to you talk, that I failed to answer your question about driving revenue and monetizing content and your website. So let me offer this analogy. If I'm in the market for a car and I go to the dealership and I go to an agent and say, I'm looking for this make, this model, and that person says, oh great, yeah, you just have to cross the street, take a left, and it's right over there. Are you going to monetize me? No, because you're not making it easy. Right. And so how often do we use a website as a splash page? And that's why I use those terms. Are we using our website as a stepping stone to the actual platform where we intend to deliver the value? Why not just consolidate it? And so if you're effective in taking on this ideology and consolidating all your member values into one central place, you can monetize that, starting with the attention, then generating the traction and credibility, and over time you're going to start being seen as that authority. And of course, there's a lot more intricacies than I'm presenting right now, right? There, you need to look into how the content and the value is being presented. You might even look at the presenters, just like me and you. We're presenting this content. Are we authentic people? Do we present as authentic? Is the story, is the content of quality? Does it actually deliver value? Or is it content that you could just, type a few prompts into Chat GPT or AI and it'll spit out the same kind of content, right? And so there's a lot of layers to this. But step one is, from a big picture, is the ideology of using your website as that source before you can even begin to monetize it. It's the exact same tactic that YouTube is doing. Google understands that by drawing the attention and the eyeballs into their platform, they're now in control. And case in point is if you subscribe to a channel or a video on YouTube or Google, guess who owns that data? It's YouTube, right? And so if the association is pushing their viewers onto YouTube, subscribe doesn't really mean much to you, does it?
Yeah, it's so important that associations that do want to develop a strategy and be able to expand what their value proposition is that they make this mental shift that the website does need to be that content hub. So when you make the switch to now see your website beyond just a billboard for people to find and, read about what membership is going to offer them, and treat it as, again, a content hub, which is going to draw in those that aren't members yet and be a continued source of utility for members. Now you're in an environment where your value proposition and your ability to grow your organization is in a much better state. Why is this? Because, as we stated on this podcast many times before, regardless of how good intentions your mission is, the reality is that members will only stay around if they're getting value out of the membership, outside of any sort of requirement they have through like education or something like that.
Yeah, you're bang on, and I would always encourage, try to anticipate the learning journey leading up to the content that you produce from a content strategy perspective, but also what is the expectation afterwards? In other words, think through the end-to-end learning journey for the member. I'll give you an example. Actually, I'll zero in on a piece of content. When we're working with associations, one of the obvious starting points is to look at a holistic cross-departmental strategy. In other words, if a piece of content that you identify as being valuable is DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and there's a department in your very same organization and association who is putting on an event or some sort of a online learning courseware related to DEI, well, hello, that might be a good idea to intersect those two so that there's synchronicity, so that a piece of content that educates and teaches and impresses some sort of a learning takeaway to the member is actually coupled and attached to some sort of call to action to register or learn more by clicking here. So that's one microcosm of an example. However, What I'm also suggesting is think through what that buying journey is before and after. Let's just say the member or prospective member watches the pieces of content or listens to it because it's a podcast, takes you up on your offer to learn more by clicking through and registering for a future event. Well, now what? Can there not be more? I would dare say yes. Try to anticipate what that persona or personality is going to want to do leading up to the days of your event. Maybe you have 30 days, 60 days before that person gets on a plane, flies out, or logs on virtually to learn more about DEI. Perhaps there's an opportunity to inspire conversation between member peers. And so that's what I meant earlier by try to anticipate what are all the motivations for a member to want to be a member. It's more than just wanting to learn or be informed about the latest trends. How can I share ideas with somebody like-minded like Marcus? So here we are talking about content and association websites and how we can impress on them what more they could do with it. I appreciate being able to sit down, interact with you, or maybe we live in different cities. I might want the opportunity to put out a post within the association's website that says, is there somebody else out there who's willing to help me think through this problem that I'm trying to solve, which is my association website? And let's say Marcus responds on a wall, an association wall or a feed or what have you. And then perhaps you and I have never met before, but that's a member to member exchange, an experience that now solidifies in my mind that this association is something that I want to belong to because it's more than just content. They've tactfully and strategically thought through all my motivations as a member beyond just content. They're making it possible for me and Marcus to now talk about and interact about the content that we've digested and about to digest in the upcoming event. Hope that made sense. I felt like I was rambling, but just what are the human motivations?
So before we move on to my next question here, I think it'd be really important to kind of linger on this topic of content on the website because you and I, we both have worked with many associations that, we hear the same story and over again where folks, I feel largely nowadays understand that content is something that they should be doing and they're trying to figure out and they're trying to test and kind of find some footing, if you will. But there's varying results. But I think through our experience, there's actually some pretty clear reasons on why some execution tends to pick up and be successful and build an audience, and where success isn't quite found and people are perhaps skeptical if their association is right for having a content strategy.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers there, and I often resort to what's happening around us in the platforms around us. YouTube is one that I always look to because even though YouTube is based on subscribers, I believe subscriber is equivalent to a member because a subscriber is looking for an exchange of value. There's an interaction there, or an exchange of value, I should say. So I dissect that personally with what leads somebody to get to a point of saying, I want to subscribe. And there's a lot of reasons, and you can break it down in this way. Part of it is cadence. If I go onto a YouTube channel and see two pieces of content, and with the last piece of content being dated May 2018, that gives me usable data. And so likewise, for an association, that predictability and that promise and commitment to delivering value outside of the content itself actually communicates something to the prospective member or to the existing member. It's bigger than that, though, and I mentioned it earlier, how is the content being presented? Is it in a form and fashion that I want to consume the content? Am I ready for a podcast? Put it this way, Oprah's brand, Oprah Winfrey, wasn't developed overnight. There was probably a time when nobody knew Oprah Winfrey. But I like to believe that consistency and awareness and the sheer quantity of shows that Oprah put herself out for, that helped. And it wasn't just the volume and exposure, it's also the quality of the content. And I referred to this earlier. You can be authentic in delivering the message, but if the content isn't valuable, you may not get as far. But it also goes the other way. It also works the other way too. The content may be really good, but if it's presented by an on-camera presenter who doesn't strike me as warm, authentic, or genuine, that also may fall flat. And so there's varying factors and elements at play. All that is to say that the more that you can check those boxes, the better off you will be. And just thinking back to our conversation today, you mentioned monetization and sponsorship and advertising. You also have to think through, is the content that you're producing in the way that you're producing it, does that complement the way that your advertisers and sponsors want to be presented as well? And sometimes that's as simple as, is there alignment in the message? Sometimes that is as complex as who's in control of delivering the message. Regardless, there needs to be an alignment there. There needs to be a checks and balances to make sure that all those factors are being addressed.
Yeah, some great points there. I think there's just no escaping in this day and age. Just if we zoom out and look at human behavior as a whole across all demographics and industries, and even look at the behavior of companies, there's no getting around that how ubiquitous the consumption of content is in these days. And we are often blind to it because even personally, we don't see ourselves as, oh, I'm watching content right now, or I have consumed a piece of content, right? No, it's like, no, you read an article because you're trying to, figure out how you're going to approach this problem in your business, and you're doing your research. And sometimes that comes through a podcast, and sometimes that comes through an article, and sometimes that's a conversation with a colleague or whatnot. But we're living that. And it's across all demographics now.
There's a psychology behind it, right? So right now we're not only recording our audio, but also we're recording the visuals, right? So sight and sound, and the impact of sight and sound together is different from just sight alone. Imagine this video without the audio. Imagine the audio without the video. It's going to land differently, and so the viewer may not be ready to accept that rapport. But I can tell you that by offering sight and sound, viewers can hear and see us. That's going to expedite the trust building process. It makes Randell and Marcus, as we're being seen, more warm and receptive. And so that there are a lot of factors. And you know what, I'd be remiss if I didn't share this, because I too belong to a couple of membership-based groups and associations. And I believe the ones who are absolutely nailing it are the ones who develop a framework for their content. Because it's easy to say, we've chosen this lineup of content because it's what we believe, or it's what I think the member is after. Well, how do you really know? So unless you have a framework that actually is self-perpetuating, self-manifesting, and self-sustaining, that seeks feedback and uses data productively and constructively, you really won't know. But if you have a framework to put out content, collect feedback via surveys or polls or what have you, use that data to then refine and improve on your content strategy and your lineup, that's the only way you're going to self-manifest it and create that Jim Collins's flywheel effect, so that it's self-perpetuating and not just dependent on any one individual.
Yeah, that's super important. And the other thing that we see when folks try and dip their toes into content, I actually relate it, and I'm sorry for anyone that's heard me use this expression again, but it's very related to, I would say like the inception of social media, and Fortune 500 companies, even the inception of the internet. It's like, okay, there's this new thing. We feel like we have to participate. No one knows what they're doing yet. Like, okay, make a website. Or you remember early internet, like what Coca-Cola.com used to be like, it's quite funny looking back at it. But
You're dating yourself.
Yes, I am. And also social media, like no one had an idea what you're supposed to be doing on social media. The culture didn't even develop yet. We just had technology, right? So associations are in a kind of a funny split right now, where there's those associations that have really think about their website more strategically than what has been used previously, just as, okay, there's a place for people to find us. We'll put some important information that's kind of like evergreen on there. We'll put what our membership looks like under the how to join button. And okay, that's our web. Maybe there's an LMS on there. But going back into content, revisualizing the website as you want to create a destination for your industry, right? That's what drives recruitment, through the consistent posting of valuable utilitarian information that is useful to your industry and member, right? So what are we talking about there? Where does it go off the rails? Well, there's a certain level of commitment that you actually have to go through before your experiment, if you will, can even be graded between, a success or a failure. Why? Because you, again, a little bit of empathy for your member there, or applying a little bit of marketing knowledge here. If you don't train people that what to expect from your website, that you haven't actually put a portion on your website where it is developed to look like a content hub that's easy to go between articles, videos, and I can find what I'm looking for very easily without expanding my navigation across the entire website. And I understand, because I've frankly, look how we've all been trained. I understand how to use LinkedIn the moment I've opened it up. No need to teach me how to use LinkedIn. It's all recognizable. And the association website should feel like that. And the reason I say that is that we need to train the audience to understand that this is a predictable destination. Like, it needs to be clear that you can expect more from us in the future, right? And that's how you build that authority. And from a membership marketing perspective, when you're posting consistently, every single one of those points is a new opportunity to find someone that was looking for that information and discover you for the first time.
You're bang on, and everything you said there. Therein lies the value of user experience and understanding and anticipating what the member experience is and will be when they first lay their eyes on your website, pre and post them registering to become a member. Everything you said is bang on, and I would say that the opportunity here is to look at the intersection of your website and your content strategy as an investment, not a destination, or not a checkbox, if you will, as some. You brought me back to the early 2000s, where a website was treated as, I just got to have a website so people know that I'm real. It's bigger than that, right? And that's where utility needs to be front and center, and that when people land on your homepage, they know they know how to get to the podcast, they know how to get to the videos, they know how to get to the courseware they need to go, they know how to get everything that they're looking for. But I use the word investment because a lot of other organizations that I've spoken to, whether they believe it or not, whether they see it, they're actually spending a lot of money. You can quantify the actions and activity behind creating content, and there's a dollar figure there. And if you don't treat it as a long-term recurring investment, then it's always going to be seen as a cost center, when in reality, it can actually be your sales force that does the selling for you as you sleep at night. And so, humor me here. If an association works diligently for an entire year, who knows how many pieces of content they can come up with? Dozens, hundreds? That's for the association to determine. Dozens and hundreds of pieces of content, whether it's audio, video, multimedia, whatever, that is out there in the ether now selling the brand value that you can provide a member. To me, from a business perspective, that has leverage written all over it. So why wouldn't you look at it as an investment? A really good one at that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we see this time and time again. I mean, going back to the top of how we started this podcast, look at our events. Look at the publication more historically. They're less profitable these days. But hey, why are they less profitable? Digital, right? And why is that? Well, today's buyers are looking for digital, right? I'm not going to be too hard on publications. There's definitely a place for them. There's people that still appreciate it. I appreciate what a publication can be. It's not about, and we've actually discussed this before, it's not a this or that question. It's just the reality that we live with both. We still all keep our traditional, like our publications, be it whatever topic or environment that is, but we're always living in a digital age now, and we have to contend with buyers, our potential sponsors. Those folks are looking for digital options more and more.
We have talked about that, and so I'll be careful not to go into too much excruciating detail. But you're right in that environment, the association environment, is used to a publication like a magazine, is used to an event, and both of those mediums being monetized by way of advertising and revenue. And so if an association hasn't yet monetized its website and the intersection, the apex of their website and content strategy, that's a growth opportunity. Why wouldn't you consider it? And back to our conversation the last time we sat down, it doesn't have to cannibalize one another. It can be 100% complementary of one another. Back to the point I made earlier about creating a content strategy that intersects and synchronizes each department. If education wants to educate its members about DEI and the events department has an upcoming event about DEI, sync those two up. And that's an opportunity, and on a far greater scale, you can marry the monetization opportunities among all your mediums and all your events and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I want to linger on this a little longer because, like I mentioned just previously, like we see this. We see that when associations adopt a content strategy, that ends up being the gasoline that they need to be able to drive new revenue. But inherently, there is the question of, okay, well, say they're coming at from the other perspective, and that they understand the importance of delivering content across all demographics, but certainly younger generations just expect this sort of value proposition kind of baked into the cake, if you will. Well, how do we do it? Like, just from a time, resources, competency perspective, like how am I going to fund doing this sort of stuff? And say your average video, just, over the course of the year, say you publish 200 pieces of content, let's say each piece is, $1,000, right? How are you going to be able to fund something like that? Well, how do you fund the event, right? Imagine if the event didn't have any sponsorship tied to it. We're having crackers and water for dinner, folks. Sorry. Yeah. Right? There's a reason why we could put on awesome events, because we've already accepted that we're going to bring in sponsors, right? And we figured out that, hey, they could actually contribute here in a meaningful way. And we could find the right set of sponsors that, actually align with what our members are looking for, which shouldn't be a surprise for anyone right now. The private sector is the driver for innovation for many sectors, right? Our members want to know kind of what they're up to. And I say that because there's kind of no better place that both the buyers, those sponsors, want to be, and no better place than we can kind of facilitate that information sharing than on the website. So if we deploy a strategy where we commit, right, you get all your executives together and you've agreed, okay, it's actually of strategic importance that we're going to deploy a content strategy inside of our association, because we need to step up the level of information that we're providing to our industry, to our members. The issue there isn't where are we going to find the money. It's actually how much money do we want to make off of this? Because going back to what I said before, that's what buyers are looking for. Buyers are under more pressure to be able to deliver data with their purchases, right? And not only are you able to provide data, but you're able to give more than just brand messaging. How many innovative companies out there are satisfied with basic brand advertising nowadays? They want to be able to deliver a message, right? And we've seen the rise of the subject matter expert, both from a peer perspective, but also from those that are leading an innovation. So, and we've seen this play out in the association space. Those folks are more than happy to come in and just contribute to the conversation. Having a very classic kind of ad where they're going to give you a list of features and benefits, which has its place, isn't actually what's the premium nowadays. In the B2B world, this is well established. The play right now in B2B is to be able to display your competency, and that's how you actually get people interested in your product. So how does that apply to the association space? Well, those are businesses that are your sponsors. They're more than happy to come on and contribute in whatever way they can to your content strategy, right? So, and what's the value of that? A lot more than a banner.
Absolutely. I have good news for you though, Marcus. Everything that you're describing here is well-won territory. And you might call me biased, but here at Worker Bee, we have a process for doing this. So if you'd like a free consultation, I will give that to you for free. Absolutely, my friend. If you cut this out, I totally understand, but I'm joking. But here's the thing is you summarize it really nicely. We don't have to complicate it. There's well-worn strategies and tactics that are already deployed for the magazine, already deployed for the event. And so this is quite common where an association is receiving this input, this consultation from us, and there's the, oh yeah, moment, which is, yes, it's an aha, but we don't have to complicate it. You mentioned it. There's advertising opportunities. There's a sponsorship opportunity where the association can lead with the content. So earlier I made mention of DEI content. So the association can invest funds to create a series of some sort or put out a content about DEI, and a supporting organization can either be a co-presenter or a sponsor of that content. So that's one way to generate the revenue. But then there's a full content marketing play where the two messages are one and the same. The association and the sponsor is partnering on crafting the message and delivering that. And so that's where the checkbox or the checklist I referred to earlier really counts. How's it going to be presented? Is the content actually really good, or is it common? And go through the rest of the checklist. But those are the top three. That's a good place to start. Those three mechanisms.
Yeah, those are great points. And, this topic of seeing the website as another source of revenue, much again, like publications and our events, it's worth spending time, because we see this, right? Is that what is new is uncertain, which is scary, which is fair, right? But it shouldn't be that concerning because, again, these things are already being done, right? Look at our events. We're collecting eyeballs, right? We're putting on event. We're putting on content. The physical place is the platform of the content. Publication, easier analogy there. The important piece here, folks, is if what you put together, in this case, the website, has eyeballs on it, you better believe people are going to be interested, And not only that, and I'm a broken record here, but I'm so passionate about it, is that associations are in such a privileged position with the buyer because they get to look at them and go, my audience, 100% of it is applicable, is your target audience, and there's no bloat. And everyone's fighting bloat. Every buyer is fighting bloat. Any buyer of advertising lives with bloat. They know that they're going to waste X amount of dollars this year, just simply because of how targeting works. So it's every marketer's best interest to have the best targeting that they can. And associations just lay it out on a silver platter that, hey, you're home. My people are your people, right? And that paired with your website, embracing content strategy, optimized to deliver content, is a destination inside the industry. How is that not an attractive proposition that is just any good salesperson within an association should be ready to jump on board with?
Hey, I get it. You mentioned the potential apprehension of an association doing something new. I totally get that. And that's typically where we start, is to break down those barriers. And also, I mean, you, you can't hide the fact that any organization needs to treat any and all of their activities as an investment or measure it fiscally. Yeah, go figure. The COO is talking about dollars and cents, but that's the truth. And in some of the examples that I just shared moments ago about monetizing your event and your and your magazine, and of course your content strategy and a website, there's an immediate, more direct gratification there, in that there's dollars and cents, there's a transaction there. So that if you're putting together a content marketing solution for that involves advertisers and sponsors, of course there's going to be an exchange of funds. And so that's your quick hit validation that you're doing something right for the sponsors, and if you do it correctly, for the member as well. But you know what? Even beyond the advertising and sponsorship and content marketing plays, it still can be measured fiscally. And you know, in our conversation today, I've been using the word investment. If you take it to the other side of the fence, before a member becomes a member, let's classify them as a prospective member. There's an investment that can be calculated there, because as I mentioned earlier, there are activities, there's a breakdown of work and effort that a executive director and their team at the association need to put forth in order to create something as simple as promotional material or content that will not only attract attention or garner attention from a prospective member, but get that member to say, yes, I do want to move forward with becoming a member. And that's typically how association websites are used anyhow, is this big promotion of what it means to become a member. Well, guess what? As I mentioned earlier as well, that's your sales force. That content, that activity is an investment. And the more content you put out there, the larger, the more effective, the more relevant your sales force becomes. Put it this way. Technology's changed. And with the proliferation of technology, social media, access to data, access to content, buying habits have changed. The last time we sat down in this studio, we talked about that. And buying habits have changed to a point where before people make a purchase, they're researching, whatever researching means to them. I'll tell you what it means for me. It means going on Google. It means reading articles. It means listening to podcasts and watching videos. These are all things, habits that a prospective member will do before they make a decision, yes or no, that I will join your membership. And to really drive that buying habit home, I'll offer this. And I recognize that this is apples and oranges, but in recent past, I would say the last 5 to 7 years, I've made some pretty large purchase decisions for my personal life, and I recognize that this is personal, but I think it's important. I decided to purchase an engagement ring for my now wife. I decided to purchase a brand new car, and I moved forward with a brand new home build. The reason I'm putting this on the table is I didn't touch or see these 3 items in person before making that decision. So let me repeat that. I bought the engagement ring online, didn't touch it, didn't feel it. The car, I made the decision just looking at videos. I didn't test drive it. It wasn't in the city. And the house, I didn't feel like I needed to do a walkthrough. So that's the power of content. If you put yourself in the shoes, in the seats of your prospective members and try to anticipate all the pieces of content or objections that they would ask themselves, if you disseminate that, you can be that much more successful. And that's why I often refer to it as a sales force, selling your value proposition.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, this is obviously just low-hanging fruit in terms of the advantages of having a content strategy, is that especially when you say bring your leadership together and commit cross-departmentally to creating a strategy plan more specifically for the year. This is what we're going to publish this year. This is the amount that we're going to commit to. And you've committed to a number that is consistent. So we're not saying, hey, 2 webinars a month, right? Consistent content over the course across the course of the year. And that's guided by what are those topics that are most important to your members and to your industry course that's going to have an impact on recruitment. Just let's all put our marketing hats on and even our membership hats on, right? Every piece of content we put out there is another opportunity that's evergreen. It's living there on Google for someone to find and end up on our website, which is what? A step away from the membership page. So think about it almost like this. Every piece of useful contribution that you put out there for your members and prospective members in the industry more holistically is essentially like an ad on the internet for you. And of course, more specifically, we're talking about the benefits of SEO here.
I love finding new rabbit holes to explore with you. I'm going to go into one. I'm going to try to be really quick here. Beyond just the volume and consistency of content, I think there's other data that it communicates to your prospective member and existing members. If you look at not even the quality of the content, but the content itself, buyers are more sophisticated today than they ever have been because of access to data, to sights and sounds and all the context that's available to us as human beings. I believe buyers, prospective members, are also looking at your evolution as a thought leader, your evolution as a content creator over 5 years, over 10 years. They want to see what? They want to see that your content is evolving. Because if you're saying the same thing today as you did 20 years ago, and you're priding yourself to be innovative, there's a congruency issue there. And so I think people can pick up on that.
This is the harsh truth of what it means to be relevant in this day and age. I don't think it's an ugly truth, though. It's just more of an honest truth, right? How are we truly contributing in the now, right? Because there's some associations with these great lineages, have been around for many years and have done many things. And there's nothing removing on all the success that your organization has contributed to your members into its industry. I believe, if I'm picking up what you're putting down there, is that in the age of information, in an age of such easy access to information, it shows really quick if you're not actually contributing to the here and now, which is what every member is going to be really needing from you.
Huge opportunity to present content that is authentic, especially in this AI world. But that is a rabbit hole for another day, so I'll zip it.
Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed this. I think I want to leave our members, hey, let's put on your COO hat again. If someone's listening out there and they're trying to build a case of how they're going to approach their broader leadership team on the importance of what we talked about here today, let's just put on our blinders. And how would you approach this as a COO or CFO inside of an association? What would be your opening remarks in the meeting?
Well, I would absolutely focus on objectifying and thinking objectively. And so if I think back to our conversation we just had today, number one is mindset. Content strategy as it intersects with your website is a strategy. Once you've locked in and committed to that mindset and ideology, it's time to develop a content strategy that is cross-departmental. And that's why I referred to the DEI example earlier of the education department and the events department intersecting and synchronizing their common goal, if you will. And then from there is to develop a framework that not only focuses on quality and how the content is presented, but also the frequency, the volume, and creating a feedback loop so that your content strategy is not just dependent on one person or one department. It's actually holistic of the entire community. And so that's my best attempt at looking at it objectively and from a lens of investment in business.
Awesome. We'll leave it there. Randell, again, always a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, that's our show. To our viewers, thank you for joining us. If you want to learn more about how to amplify your association's relevance and growth, check us out at workerbee.tv.